was this challenge around around assessment as a whole, just assessment of learning. So about 7 years ago, I had a bit of an aha moment, because I've been in the industry for 20 years, that people struggle with assessment. They don't really understand the process of assessment and how it works. So I had my partner, who was in a band with me when we were growing up, Ozzy. He's now an architect, a systems architect. He's based in Spain. And we had this vision for an eAssessment e-portfolio. At that time, I had no idea that Rob and Susanna were out there, who have, you'll hear the experience. I don't even have to tell you, you'll hear it later on. It's just incredible. So we started really studying this, or at least I started studying the South African market, and really started to get a grip on not only what assessment is, but what is eAssessment, and what could that be and how could that work, as opposed to just being written exams. How could we actually capture skills? And for the past 7 years, I've been working with Ozzy. We've been building this eAssessment e-portfolio platform, and I've chatted to hundreds of SDPs. So SDPs is a word that we use, which is skills development providers or training providers, or people who offer training. And I've spoken to departments within major corporations or standalones or small businesses. And there's kind of 3 common misunderstandings that keep coming up across the board. And the first one is there's a misunderstanding of what the assessment of learning process is. The second one is misunderstanding of what the digital ecosystem is required to convert to an assessment, or even an e-assessment, or even just the assessment space. People don't understand or misunderstand the ecosystem around it. And then the third thing is they don't know what assessment's costing them. So when you're running a business and you want to, best way to make money is to save costs. But if you don't actually know what your costs are, to save money becomes a bit difficult. So basically what I've come to realize is that the assessment process, in a nutshell, and if you all get copies of this, it's pretty much 5 stages or 4 stages. There's the start stage, which is the user who registers, the pre-assessment, and the building of your portfolio, which would potentially be formative assessments. That moves into an assessment phase, where the portfolio of evidence is accessed by an assessor. They do the assessment. Either there's a remedial work, which takes you back to the training side, or you get found competent and move on. Then there's a moderation phase, and the moderation phase in South Africa splits in 2 ways. And at the end of moderation, there's a verification phase. And whether this be for learning, like skills development, or if it be for recruitment, or if it be for performance management, or any task that requires an assessment, fits into this process in one way or another. So it's actually far broader than just the learning space, but we focused on the learning space. So when I speak about the assessment process, this is what we're talking about, and this is what we analyzed, this process. And we asked the providers, we asked the people who completed the research, that's ongoing research, how much is this costing you? And some of the results we got were pretty intriguing, which we'll show you now. So this is the process that we build on, that we work with, and that we enable and digitize. So this is the first thing that's a misunderstanding that we're trying to bring light to. Then we have what's called the ecosystem, which is a model that we've designed in P4P. And the ecosystem looks kind of like this. So you've got 5 segments which are linked to the assessment process. So you've got your pre-assessment meeting, your roles being your learner, your administrator, your primary assessor, and then an application process, or P4P. Now, it doesn't have to be P4P. And then as you work your way around or through the process, this is the ecosystem that's involved, and what training providers tend to forget. So they're very, very gung-ho on upskilling the end user. Lots of teach the learner how to use their phones, and digital. But the whole ecosystem needs support. So the administrators need support, the assessors need support, the moderators need support. And we see this a lot in South Africa, where when it comes to what would be called verification or time for certification with the CETA, there's a fear of moving into a digital space. And so this is the ecosystem. And this is what we've come to learn is pretty close to an ecosystem. It's we're growing, as I said, it's ongoing research, and this is what we've come to find. So first of all, we find a lot of people don't really understand the assessment process, and when it comes into a picture, they can see it and they go, oh wow. And then you start asking questions around time and cost, and they're not so sure. Then you talk about the ecosystem, and we present this, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, we see that. And there's no real thinking around this, because this also costs you. If you're not upskilling your administrators, or if you find it expensive to upskill your assessors because it takes more time, just let your technology run for a bit, or let your process run for a bit, and you'll start picking up on a whole bunch more costs to grow. All right, so those are the two areas.